Good evening, everybody. This is Rob and Jordan, and we are back for Archangel Inc. Live number 39. Jordan, how are you doing tonight?
I am great tonight, Rob. How are you?
Oh, good, good, good. So tonight I'm looking forward to chatting a little bit about book outlining. And this is a topic I think that is helpful. Occasionally we get authors who are still in the developmental phase or authors who have already worked with us and are reaching out and saying, hey, I'm working on this next book. I'm not exactly sure how to go about it. How can I figure out how to outline a book and get my thoughts in order to make the whole writing process a little bit easier? So we wanted to go over some of that this evening. And that is going to be our topic for tonight, Book Outlining 101. Anything you want to say as we start off on that, Jordan?
No, I will say I'm kind of a nerd about book outlining. I really like it, so I'm excited to talk about tonight. I enjoy the process of taking an idea that's in your head and putting it down on paper, putting it down on computer onto a notepad or whatever you want to use. We're going to talk about tools and stuff later on too.
Right.
But yeah, it's a super exciting process because I think a lot of people have an idea for a book or an idea for a second book. But then it's just swirling around in there. How do I get it out and make it this real thing? And that's the most exciting part for me about writing a book is getting that real book in my hands. Just thinking about the process from the outlining, the beginning phase is the outlining idea process to getting a physical book. Like I said, I'm a geek about it or a nerd about it, but it is super exciting. And I know other authors out there can definitely relate to the feeling of getting the completed manuscript in your hand. There's nothing like it. And it starts with an outline, figuring out what you want to talk about. So
yeah, I think that's awesome. I have gone back and forth. I mean, there are some folks who are able to, everybody works in their own particular way. Some folks don't benefit as much from outlining, or at least they are not as keen to use it or not as familiar with how to use it. I really like it. It's, the best outlines for me are the ones where you get all of your ideas sorted and in motion. And then when you actually get to the writing phase, you've already kind of bookmarked in your head, oh yeah, I have some ideas about what I want to share with that. So the ideal outcome, as far as I've experienced it from an outline, is when you actually get down to writing and putting it in place, it's going to be smoother, more coherent, more put together. You're not scattershot, bringing one idea here and then the next chapter, you've got some other kind of brain dump that you put out there. You put that work in ahead of time and you're able to have it make sense and flow, look at it, reasonably objectively as much as you can because you are close to the material, but look at it in as much of an outsider's perspective as you can. So you see that outline and yeah, this element leads to the next element and it all kind of culminates into the big picture of the book that I'm trying to share. So again, there are lots of different ideas and ways and approaches to writing. And if anybody out there watching or either live or in the comments on the replay has ideas, we're happy to hear them and to share any of them that might be of value. But we're going to share some basic outlining information here this evening. So cool. All of that said, we'll jump in. So why outlining is important. There are a number of different things that are good about it, and we can kind of touch on them. Makes it way easier on you to get a book done. Anything you want to share on that, Jordan?
I think that one's pretty self-explanatory, but for me, and I think for a lot of people, it's going to be easier to finish your book. And if we can make the process easier, that's great. I know a lot of people that say, I could never write a book. I don't know how to sit down and write. And I always respond and say, actually, I wrote a book, and I know I'm nothing special. You can do it too. And to me, it really does start with that outlining process, figuring out what you want to say. So yeah, if you do an outline and are able to think through some ideas, it makes it way easier to actually get that finished book done because you know what you want to say.
Yep. No, I think all great points, and I have nothing else to add on that.
Cool.
Got it. Nailed it. So it helps to have thoughts organized in one place. I think that's a really that's helpful. When you're drafting, when you have these ideas in your head, they are, again, kind of scattershot. They can be all over the place. And when you outline, it gives you a chance to approach it with a little bit of intentionality and deliberation so that you can put it into a skeleton, into an outline, into an organizational system that's going to make sense, not just in your head, but someone else's as well, as they're encountering this information, for the first time potentially.
Yep.
Cool. Next, helps to ensure that you won't miss any important topics. I think this is a good one as well. When you are putting this information together, again, sometimes you get into writing, you can go down rabbit holes, trail off, and not necessarily cover all the big picture ideas that you want to. So when you have this outline, it's a reminder to yourself, hey, by the way, don't forget, A, B, or C when you're also discussing, D and E. Anything else you wanted to share on that?
No, I just think that last point is super important when you're thinking about culminating the whole and figuring out what you want your book to say as a whole. That's where I think, it's probably one of the most important things to do that outline process and to figure out what all you want to say. Because if you start writing, you could get focused on this and then your book takes a direction. And then all of a sudden, you left out these very important topics. And maybe it's harder to work those in. Now you can always go back and edit and work those topics in. But if you have it in there in the first place, okay, and an outline doesn't have to be, you don't have to go from outline and do exactly what they outline. I think that's a natural process of book, right? You're going to think of things as you go. I think that's pretty normal as you're doing, further research, you're going to think of other things. But if you want to make sure you're not missing important topics, starting from the ground up and just doing that research early on can help.
Yeah, I think that's really key. That's important because, again, you can go down these different rabbit holes, and as you start writing, you might realize that there's more to it, or there's a different direction that you want to take. But at least if you have it in your outline, you're able to remind yourself, hey, I did at least think of this beforehand. This was something that I wanted to address. Maybe it's not relevant anymore. Maybe I'm able to address it somewhere else. But again, it just allows you to not skip over something as you jump into it and you're like, all right, I'm tired of talking about that now. Let's just move on to the next thing. At least if you have it on the outline, it's a reminder of what your original goal was. Cool. Moving on. It is good to start with the big picture and then complete the whole. Just big picture of your topic, of your idea, of what it is that you're trying to approach. I think that can be really helpful. We've talked about before having a sense of your why, whether that's with your business or with your writing or whatever goal it is that you're trying to approach. Why am I doing this? What am I hoping that the reader gets out of it at the end? And when you work with the end in mind, it's easier to fit all of the pieces along the way, all of the details along the way into that, because it's all moving in the same channel. I think of it as, I don't know, if you're visualizing some sort of triangle, and there's a point at the end, and you're shooting a bunch of different arrows from a bunch of different positions, but they're all pointing, to the center, to the top of that triangle, and that's what outlining can help you to do. And and you realize if you're crafting an arrow and you're shooting it perpendicular to everything else, well, maybe it's not actually going to the tip of the triangle that you're trying to create. So maybe rework it so that it is, reposition yourself, or maybe this isn't appropriate for this particular project. And that's fine, can go on another brainstorm board, another vision list of different things that you want to talk about, because you may realize, hey, I have good information there. I have things I want to say. It's just not appropriate or relevant to this particular topic. So I'm going to bookmark it and come back to it later. But in any event, when you have that big picture in mind, it's going to help you focus both in the positive sense of marshaling all of the relevant information that you have, that you've acquired, that you've researched, that you've learned from, et cetera, into that big picture goal. But it's also going to help exclude things that are not going to benefit the book. And, again, you have that sense of what's not important, which can be as valuable as what is important.
Yeah. And I think one thing I just want to highlight with what you said there, Rob, is the timing. And you could get to the point where you complete an outline of your book and start researching different topics. And you could find out, hey, actually, I'm not ready to do this. I don't have enough knowledge of this area. I need to do some more reading. I need to do some more fact checking. I need to do some more research. Maybe I could just table this idea for a not right now idea. And maybe there is a better idea for a book or a next project for me for right now.
Hmm.
And I think, yeah, you can outline and you can save that. You can log it somewhere. You can always come back to it.
Right.
For me, that's been helpful to really see, okay, what is the next best thing for me and my business? What matches up with my why? And I think that can help you more clearly be able to see if your book, if your project is, if it's the right time to do it. Because that's a big question I've had a lot. Is this next thing really the best thing for me? And I think, if you were to just dive in and start writing it, you're potentially it's not wasted time because you're still going to have that, but it might not be the best place to put your efforts right now.
Right. Yeah, like you mentioned, you're still building an asset, you're still creating a resource for the future. But again, with outlining, it gives you a chance, outlining along with just taking a sort of outside look and doing a little gut check and assessment, an evaluation. All of that can help you realize, okay, yes, this actually is advantageous right now. It's worth pursuing at this time. Or like you mentioned, it's something that we can table, maybe look at later. And one of the nice things about digital publishing and creating your own projects is you can release revised editions. You're not going to necessarily have 1,000 copies of an old book that are sitting around. You might say, actually, I didn't research this enough at the time, kind of thought about it, held off on it. Subsequently, I've done research. I see how it really fits into the bigger goal. Here's the second edition of this book. Most of it's still the same, but there's new, updated, and revised information in here, and you can do that. There's that opportunity. So don't feel like you have to get everything in all at once. If it's not congruent, if it's not fitting right now, maybe it'll fit later, or maybe it won't, and you can again bookmark that for a different project. But definitely, use your big picture, your why to inform the construction of your book.
Yep.
Cool. All right. So another tip in terms of outlining, break it into chapters. Might seem a little bit obvious, but chapters are one of the bigger ways of organizing your thoughts. And if you imagine a series, I like to think of it as a series of branches. You've got the big main branch, which is your book, and then various other branches along the way, with their smaller branches branching off, and then the individual individual leaves and so forth. And those individual leaves maybe are the paragraphs or even the sentences, and as they go up, they're all a part of components that are larger and larger. So break it into that, and you can say, all right, this is where I can move things around and organize them most coherently. The nice part about doing it during the outline phase rather than afterward, because we've seen it happen, is when you organize it from the beginning, when you have a game plan from the beginning, you can really make the editing process and the polishing process a lot smoother. We work with manuscripts that have that need developmental work, and many of them do, and that's fine. But to the extent that you're able to kind of bring that developmental work to the forefront before you even begin, before you commit to anything, the easier it's going to be to get all of that into shape, rather than again trying to do it afterward, pull sections from here, sections from there, ideas, even turns of phrases from one portion of the book to another, because they make sense there. If you had put the time into outlining and gotten clear on that ahead of time, that might make things a lot smoother in the editing and polishing stages.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And where you can break it down into those bite-sized chunks. For me, it helps my mind think about it like, okay, that's going to be a chapter. I definitely want to do a chapter about that. And to me, that helps make this nebulous concept of an idea of what I want my book to be into a concrete thing.
Yep. Another note on that, for nonfiction, chapter should include one main idea or point that you'd like to get across that relates to the whole. So again, just doubling down on that same idea that we've been conveying. Have that point. Okay, great. It might be a small chapter. It might be a longer chapter. You can figure it out. Every book, every project's going to be a little bit different. But have it represent a point that is going to relate back to the whole.
Yep.
All right, so let's get into making a good outline, tips to making a good outline. First one, get all of your thoughts out, but keep it organized. Kind of going over a lot of these same ideas here, but actually, Jordan, what do you have to say on that?
I think the biggest thing there, I think, keeping it organized is, like I said before, maybe it's kind of obvious, but I do think that if you get to a point where you're at 10 pages or 15 pages or 20 pages of an outline, it starts to become just a burden. And you feel like when you're writing, I have to pull that from there. And then you get to a point where like, I'm kind of confused. So the more you can keep it, you do want to get all your thoughts out, but you do want to make it an organized outline. I remember one of my first outlines I wrote, Rob, was about 5,000 words. And it may even became more than that. No, you can certainly get your thoughts down in less than 5,000 words. You don't need to write full sentences and full paragraphs. Keep it as short and keep it short and bullet pointed if you're able to do that, and break it down into subheadings and sections. And you don't need to write your book in your outline, as I've learned. The more you can just be short and concise, then it's going to be easier for you to look over that and kind of see where you're at and see where where the organization is.
Yep. I think it's a really good point. And that's something that I would emphasize as well. I would even go so far as to encourage you to prohibit yourself from writing in full sentences, only words or short phrases or something, a handful of words, because the outline isn't where you're explaining those concepts. The outline is not where you are conveying it to the reader. This is yourself. This is for yourself, for your own purposes, to remind yourself of this thought or this idea or this concept that you need to explain, to go over, to make sense of, to clarify for the reader. And for that reason, focusing too much on trying to get the phrasing just right, that's not the place for it. The outline is not where all of that happens. In the same way that we recommend when you're writing your book to turn off your editor brain when you're working in your writer brain. Don't second guess every thought, every word, every sentence that you've put out there. In some cases, I've seen some authors recommend literally don't use the backspace. If you screw up, just start a new sentence, reproduce it, because it can help get into that habit of not trying to overthink it. Really, at that stage, you're just trying to get the ideas out. Likewise, in the outline, you're just trying to tap on it. So it's almost like you are placing a safety cone or something on that one idea. You're not actually drawing the new road. You're not actually drawing your map. You're just saying, hey, I'm pinning it. That's something that I'm going to address as I journey through the process of writing this book. And for that reason, again, if you spend too much time writing writing these sentences out, doing anything more than a word or a few words just to remind yourself of what you're trying to communicate, you could derail yourself and again end up with, as you described, a 5,000 word outline that's really just a short book. So this is a tool. This isn't the end goal. This is something that is going to facilitate it. Obviously, there's not. I recommend that as a rule. There's no hard and fast rule. Everybody will figure things out on their own. Maybe it makes sense. Maybe you have this really beautiful phrase or sentence that you really want to include. Throw it in there. That's fine. But that's not the main part of this whole process. The main part, again, just creating those pins, creating that roadmap, so you know more or less where the heck it is that you're trying to go with your writing. And then when you actually get to the writing portion, that's when you are focusing on it, making the language pop and be elegant and say all the great things that you want to say.
Yep, you got it.
Cool. Next, other ideas on how to make a good outline. Brainstorm with a friend or someone who's familiar with your subject matter. And I can speak a little bit to that whole brainstorming process. I've been working with a client on coming up with different book ideas and or book title ideas. So you want to not stop that process when you're starting out. This is where all of those different things come together, and you put it all. You can edit it later. Again, you don't want to hit the backspace bar, or, the backspace key. Put it all out there. Brainstorm. Figure out all the different ways that you could go, and then once you have it laid out, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, this doesn't. Kind of start to sort it at that point to usable or potentially usable, and not right now. And then from there, you can, hopefully, because you're brainstorming with somebody who has familiarity with your topic and who has your interest at heart, you're able to come up with more than you would on your own. You might be surprised at how much you're able to come up with together, the sum being more, or the whole being more than the sum of the parts when it comes to brainstorming sessions.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it just helps you to, and I think the other important thing there, Rob, is it helps you to speak about it too. That's been helpful for me. Like, once I start talking about idea, it's like the whole idea, if you can teach someone something, you gain an immediate better understanding of the subject matter. And that's what we're trying to do in books. We're trying to teach someone something.
Right.
So speaking it out loud and talking about someone asks, hey, well, how would it work in this? And then you think about it and you're like, actually, I have no idea. Like, that's a great question. Maybe I need to go back to the drawing board and think about that a little bit more. So it can help expose maybe where you don't you don't know it well enough, which is really helpful in the beginning phases because you have time. You can go look and make sure that those things get inside your book.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. When you have blind spots interrogated or at least inquired about, it can be really helpful in crafting a better end product. Like you said, you may, well, hey, what about, this type of, or this concern, or why would you do it this way? And you think, I've always done it that way. I don't know. Maybe there's no reason to do it that way. Or you can say, that's a great question. I'm gonna figure it out. Or maybe you have a really good answer that you weren't even thinking about including in the manuscript, but it really will add to it because, hey, just to be clear, the reason that we would do it, this way is, X, Y, and Z, and that is again going to add to the manuscript. It's reconnecting with the why, and sometimes the why is the big picture why, and sometimes the why is the granular why. Why are you making this recommendation? Why are you using the particular strategy that you're suggesting, et cetera?
Yep.
Cool. All right. Another important point to making a good outline is to research. Use research tools to make sure you are hitting good topics. Anything that you want to say on that? We have a couple of little subcategories under that, but
yeah, I think this one really, we could do a whole live video on this one, Rob. I'm sure that, people have written whole books about how do you do research on a subject. We've recommended different ideas and tools that I've found helpful, that we've found helpful, that we've shared with people. But you really just, I don't know, we can dive into those and we have those notes about what those specific ones are. But yeah, make sure you're doing your research and then put that in your outline. I think sometimes and I've done this before too. I'm doing research for a book and I'm just looking at a bunch of different things, but then maybe not saving links. And you go to this point where you're like, I came across that really good quote or that really good blog article or that book that I read that I don't remember. What did I want to take out of that? And just it's one thing if you're in that topic and writing about that, your topic, just always be thinking about that. How can I use this? How can I save this for later on? I had a friend once that said, hey, how do you put so many quotes in your book? And it's something I didn't even think about because it's something I'm always doing. I'm always thinking about, like, good quotes that I want to eventually put in a book, and I'm saving those and logging those.
Yeah.
And I think the more we can do that as we go, and you learn that as you start writing, become an author, and whenever you have those big ideas and you're like, oh, I like that, instead of just trying to remember it, because you're not going to remember it, and just assume you're going to forget, assume you're not going to remember where the link is or where that thing is, and save it.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's a great point. And creating some sort of repository, and there are a couple of different tools and things that we could that we'll mention a little bit later on to help with that. But that can be really useful. There's the classic recommendation for people who have businesses, who have ideas. Have a pen and paper on the side on your nightstand. When you wake up in the middle of the night, and you have this idea. Find a way to record it. Or maybe just grab your phone and turn the voice memo on and. Hey, June 19th, it's 2:30 in the morning, and I had, I was just thinking about XYZ. Can be really, really good and add to it. We'll also, we'll get to this in, actually, we might as well just jump right on.
Sure.
The next three that I'll mention, use Udemy to look up course topics, peer into Amazon Books to check their table of contents, and then use forums like Quora and Reddit to see what people are talking about in your subject matter. And I think there are a couple of thoughts that I have on that. But the first one that I'll share first is when you are putting this outline together, going back to your why. Part of your why is I want to bring some value. What's my value proposition to my reader? And when you're including these keywords and these research topics, these ideas, you're saying, hey, this is a blind spot for other authors in the genre, or this is an area that's underserved, and I'm going to actively serve it. I might have my own agenda, my own vision for this book and things that I want to mention. But if I can do that and simultaneously incorporate some pain points, some areas of concern that have been left unaddressed by my target audience, then that's a really good that's a really good idea. It's a really good approach. And when you, again, include it in your outline, it's expanding the sphere of influence and the sphere of value that you can bring. It's not just what's in your head, which might be really good and might be unique and potent and contribute a lot, but it's also thinking about my audience and what is my audience looking for, and how can I provide that? So it allows you to keep their interests in mind, at least in conjunction with your own and what you're trying to accomplish with the book, in so much as they are not corresponding one-to-one. Just incorporating some of that can be really beneficial to enhance the value of your book and make it more helpful for your reading audience.
Yeah, this is the whole idea of research and keywords and seeing what people are really interested in, see where people are really looking at, like what questions they're asking. That can all be really helpful as you're coming up with your outline. Yep.
Yep. And then specifically, we mentioned Udemy is a good place for online courses. You might be surprised to know. So I'll give an example. This isn't a Udemy course, but this is more of an Amazon book and a keyword thing. Hassan Osman, who we've mentioned before, he has a book. I think it's called Managing Virtual Teams, and he works remotely and he manages people remotely. And so his initial title was something about remote work, team building, or something like that. But he said after doing that research, he realized that virtual teams was something that was really valuable, that people were looking for. They were using that terminology. He wasn't really using it before or thinking to search for it, but people were using that, and also there weren't topics that were, or books that were explicitly using that language. And so it was a pretty easy adjustment for him to incorporate that term and then, make use of it throughout the course of the book where appropriate. But it is a way to figure out, okay, how can I capitalize on an identified need among my audience or potential audience, and then speak their language and figure out, again, what it is that they're looking for. It was the same topic, the same material, same information, more or less, but just shifting how he communicated it and how he described it was really helpful. So that comes through research, through figuring out, okay, what do the people that are going to benefit from what I'm writing about, what are they looking for, and how can I speak to them?
Yep, I think it's always, and another thing to note, and where Udemy can be helpful, and any of these strategies can be helpful. You don't want to, if you are writing about a certain topic and you're not finding anything about it online, that might be showing you, okay, maybe there's not a lot of interest. But then on the other hand, if you're looking and you're finding a ton of things online, you could potentially get lost in the noise. So I think that's part of that research phase. So you can see, where's a good spot that I can fit in? What am I going to be bringing that? Again, back to your why. What unique value proposition can I add to that genre? And I think always and of course, you're not going to know that right away. It's something to work out and continue to consider, with multiple iterations. But yeah, it's just something to think about when you're doing these research processes.
Yep. Yeah. No, great information. And moving on, and then the last one, we mentioned Quora and Reddit, different forums. If you're an enthusiast, if you're interested in a topic, and there are people out there who are interested in it as well, it pays to just pay attention to what they're talking about and what their pain points are, what their struggles are, and see if you can offer something of value based on that. So, cool. All right, next part of tips to making a good outline, really dive in, but keep it brief too. This is, we kind of talked about avoid a 20-page outline.
Yep. I jumped the gun on that, but yeah, I knew it's something I've done, so I'm going to speak from that experience.
Yeah, no, it's very, it's good. It's good to keep that in mind. Again, you're not writing your book in the outline. Hopefully, you're providing that roadmap to what you write about. And sometimes I find that just forcing yourself to use one word or a short phrase or something, a sentence fragment, can kind of keep some of that energy at bay and get you excited and motivated to actually talk about, hey, I have something to say. Whereas if you let yourself, describe it in a paragraph, maybe you kind of lose your juju, your mojo when you get to actually writing it, because you've already, worked really hard in crafting it, instead of letting that kind of simmer and percolate and come to the fore when you actually do get to the writing process.
Yep.
Cool. All right. So let's talk about a couple of tools for outlining. And first thing to keep in mind, experiment to find what works for you. This is, the 101 of it. And I have the ways that have worked for me, and Jordan has ways that have worked for him. But if you try these and they're not jiving with you, then there might be other ways. So feel free to give it a shot. Again, maybe you find that it's really helpful to have full sentences. Maybe you find that it's really helpful to not use some of these other online tools. That's fine, but figure out what works for you. The point is, see if outlining can help make this whole process smoother and more effective for you. So,
yep, absolutely.
First one, I like this actually. This works pretty well for me in many cases. And when we're coming up with the outlines for these live videos, sometimes I'll do actually good old fashioned pen and paper. Being able to in a tactile way, get your thoughts down, jot them out, and communicate what you are trying to say can be really helpful. I also find that the process of writing, because it's a little bit slower than the process of typing, it forces me to be a little bit more deliberate and contemplative as I am coming up with those ideas. It's not, jot them down really quick and they're out of my fingers almost as fast as they're in my head. Instead, just like when you're writing a letter or a birthday card or something, gives you a chance. What do I want to say? You're crafting a sentence word by word, letter by letter, and it just adds a bit of reflection time to that process, and that can be pretty helpful.
Yep, and because you also can't copy and paste. So like you say, you have to go in and actually write it out. And I know sometimes I've done that when I'm outlining. I'm just copying and pasting things, and I don't remember them because I'm barely even stopping and taking the time to read them. But if you are writing them in a notebook, I always keep a little notebook with me too. And I've heard of people that have had success with this, dedicating journals or notebooks, entire journals or notebooks to their next project. And, making sure everything that goes into this notebook is about the project I'm going to be working on. So if I'm going to go to work on this book or my next project, I'm going to have this little journal of notes and potential quotes and websites and those things in it so that I can use that.
Yeah, no, that's a really great point. You can't copy and paste. You can't just mindlessly dump everything in there. You have to actually, again, think about what you're doing and remember it. It's going to help with retention and with coherency and making sure that it's actually a part of the bigger whole. All right.
Yep.
Moving on. Jordan uses Trello for book outlining. We've talked about Trello a little bit before, and maybe at some point we'll go over some of the many different tools and uses for it. I know Jordan is a big Trello guy. So Jordan, tell us about book outlining using Trello.
Rob, I actually have my tab up if you want me to do a screen share, or I could just talk about it briefly. But if we want to look at it, we certainly can.
Sure. Yeah. Let's jump on that for a minute.
Cool. Let me know when it's up.
All righty. And I think we are good.
All right. So yeah, this is the book outline for my Volcanic Momentum book. I just had Momentum book outline over here because I didn't know what it was going to be called. At that point, I was like, I'm going to talk about momentum. We'll see what happens here. But for the most part, just ignore all of the cards in here. I know that's a lot of different information. Really, I just wanted to just share briefly what I did for these lists. Now, Trello has these lists. These are like the overarching topics. So I just have all my important links and big ideas here. So anything that I'm going to be thinking about or working on or updating, I'm going to keep on this left side so I can keep it access to it. Here we had themes to include possible chapters list. I actually had this list even longer. You'll see it goes down and has a bunch of stuff where I took pictures and added stuff in there. These are the things that I don't know if I want to talk about these, but I'm going to order these and just start to think about those ideas. Really, you're just thinking about, I like this because what I was finding, Rob, in my struggle as I started to do really long outlines, is I would write the outline and I'm like, hey, there's no organization here. I can't move stuff around. I can't visually see what is going on and what's happening. So we'll scroll over here and I'll show you what, I just don't want to hit the stop sharing button, what I ended up doing. So I took all of these ideas from like the chapter ideas list, and I actually added them and I sorted them out, and I broke them into sections. So what you can see here is really what I used to build my book, and it was extremely helpful in organizing it.
Yeah.
You'll see I have this label here that said in book. I wrote the introduction and I put it in the book. So while I was working on the introduction, I was able to take notes, jot down ideas. What do I want to say in the introduction? What potentially what quotes do I want to put in there? What is the point of what I'm trying to say? And then I could build this out initially with ideas, and then as I was going, I kept it updated as much as I could, so that I could work from it. What have I already talked about? Okay, maybe I haven't written in my book in a couple days. I'm not exactly sure. I needed a quick refresher of where I'm at. I could very easily look at this and kind of I could see what I had in my book already. So for me, the ability to make these lists, like section 1 foundation, this is what I want to talk about in section 1. And it's amazing how close these cards are to what my finished book and finished product turned out to be. I found it super helpful. I think you may need to have some familiarity with Trello to be able to do it, but it's fun to play around with. And it's certainly, like we said, find what works for you. If something like this works for you, where you can see things visually, you can label things. I love that. That's just the way my brain works here. I never had a lot of success, and it was just confusing to do it just with a Word document. So yeah, I love this method, but I pulled it up. I found this old one from a couple of years ago. I wanted to share it. So
yeah, that is super cool. Yeah, I think we're good. If you want to get back to our
good deal.
Yeah. One of the things I really like about that, Jordan, and this is the case, I would say to some extent with a Word document or a Google document or something, which we'll get to in a moment, it is manipulable. You can rearrange it. You can pull something from one section to another in a way that you can't when you're writing, on pen and paper. I mean, obviously you can have some little arrows, and I guess some people probably could just physically cut their sheets of paper and then reorganize them on a board. I've seen that, if you're crafty in that way, that can be a good strategy. But it is something that remains kind of clean and manipulable at the same time, even as you jumble things around, as you upend them, twist them inside and out, and put them in different configurations. So really cool. And for folks who are visual learners in that way and visual organizers in that way, give Trello a shot. Trello is a free tool, and we'll include a link as well, if you don't mind,
Sure.
Jordan. I know you have a little intro to Trello on your channel, and
Yep.
we can throw that on there, and there are other resources out there for anybody interested in learning about Trello.
Good deal. Yeah, the only other thing I wanted to say with that, Rob, as far as like visual ideas, I just thought of this. I've heard of people that basically do a very similar to thing, which from what I just set up in Trello, but just do it with sticky notes. And they have one wall in their house and just put sticky notes on it, and that can work for people too, because for the same reason, you're able to move stuff around. You're able to kind of visually see what am I talking about here, and that can really help. We talked about editing a little bit. We talked about editing, a lot in different videos, but just making your book as good as you can. If you have that picture of how the book is coming together, you may not need as much developmental editing down the line. It can just help your book just to be that much better right off the bat.
Yep, exactly. More sequenced, more of a logical progression and a flow to the design of it. Yep. Great points. And we will get to one more here. Google Docs. Google Docs are nice. One of the things that Google Docs allow you to do is to grant others access, editors or collaborators, and then you can get real-time feedback. And again, we've talked about using that for the editing process, but it is also really helpful for the outlining process. You can put notes and comments on the side, make corrections or adjustments or additions, and then see, what has the other person contributed to it, and then again have a working finished outline in this case that you can use to inspire and motivate the actual writing process.
Yeah, I like to share it too if I'm in especially when it's at its early stages, when it's not too much because you don't want to share with someone. If it's too busy, you might potentially overwhelm them. But if you're at a point where, hey, I have
before it's 20 pages long.
Yeah, don't share your 20-page outline. Learn from my mistakes. Anyway, yeah, but if it's short and you kind of have your main ideas listed out there, share it with someone who is familiar. Like we said before, brainstorm with someone, but share it with someone who's familiar with your subject matter, and just say, hey, what am I missing here? We had a video a few weeks back about feedback, but ask a very specific question when you're sharing that. Like I just said, hey, what am I missing? What topics do you want to see in here? That I may not even have thought about. If you're looking for feedback and just feel like you might be missing something, Google Docs. I mean, you could send someone a Word document certainly, but it's just as easy to send a link to someone and they can just type a quick comment in there. I found that very helpful.
Yeah, it does facilitate that sort of real-time collaboration, because again, you can send a Word document that they can open, they can make comments in, they can save, they can reattach, and then send back over, or you can send them a link that they can just throw a couple of words in and have the same effect. So just removing speed bumps to their assistance. Great points. I think that's about all we have on this note here, and we're going to be experimenting a little bit with live videos that aren't all an hour long. We appreciate and love everybody who's able to watch them, but we do want to make sure that we're able to provide useful, actionable content and maybe pare it down a little bit. So the final note that I have here is, what do you think of outlining? Have you tried outlining? What strategies work best for you? We're happy to hear if you have experience with it. If you've never tried it, but you're interested in trying it, that's great. Let us know. And we're happy to provide any individual recommendations that we're able to. Or if you say, hey, I love outlining and this is what I've been able to do, or I've done it a bunch and I hate it and it really doesn't work for me. It's so much better to do, this other thing. We're happy to hear that too. Everybody does have their own unique circumstances, their own way of doing things. At the end of the day, these tools, these tips, these strategies are designed to make things smoother and easier so that you can actually accomplish your aims a little bit more effectively. And they're not meant to be handcuffs that force you to do something, one particular way. It's gentle structure to facilitate the best outcome for you. Anything else that you wanted to say or share on any of that, Jordan?
No, I just totally agree with what you were saying. It's the whole idea of just make it work for you. You don't need to, if you found that it doesn't work, you don't, even if everybody out there is telling you do a book outline and you're like, but no, I actually don't need it. More power to you. Just go ahead and write. Don't let the fact that you're doing something different be an impediment to you finishing a project and putting your best foot forward.
I agree fully. So thank you everybody for watching. Make sure if you like this, like, comment, subscribe, do all those things that lets YouTube know that we are doing something that is valuable. And we appreciate you tuning in. Have a great rest of your night, and we will see you next time.